Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for joining us here with Family Network on Disabilities. My name is Latasha Bird. I'm the Multicultural Outreach Coordinator for the state of Florida with Family Network on Disabilities, and you're here today for one of our various lunch and learn sessions. Today we'll be talking about differentiating instruction. So let's go ahead and show you a flyer that's right on our page. This is a great way to find out more information about the webinars that we have and when they become available. Today's webinar will talk about differentiating instruction, how several avenues can lead to success. So if you have not taken a chance to visit either one of our regional PTI's web pages or the social media platforms that we have available for you, this is a great opportunity to do so. So take a minute right now and like the page that you're viewing this from, be it one of our regional PTIs or the Uplifting Black Families at FND Facebook group page. Today, with differentiating instruction, we'll talk about how maximizing learning potential can be very effective by using modifications. We'll talk about technology and how it has an impact on teaching and developing a child's literary skills, and also language development, literacy, reading, and writing. So we will broadcast directly from the Uplifting Black Families at FND Facebook group page. If you have not done so, please go check out the information that we have on that page. I'll give you a quick synopsis of what it will look like. This is the page. If you type in Uplifting Black Families at FND, it comes straight to this group page. Join in the conversation. All you would have to do is click on this join button right here, and it takes you directly to the page, and then you can join in the conversation. We give aspects of uniqueness that would pertain to those who identify as Black and also care for loved ones who have disabilities. It is our express concern that we make this a conversation and that this is a safe place where you feel comfortable sharing your experiences. So conversations are two-way. We ask a question, join in the conversation and answer. You may be surprised at some of the other people in the group and the ways that they can offer help, offer support. And also with F&D, we provide those resources and support that will help families make those best practices and decisions for their loved ones that they care for who have disabilities. So that's Uplifting Black Families at FND. Scoot on over there and join in the conversation. We would love to have you. So for today, when you are looking for differentiated instruction and information we have today will all show fun and practical methods that can be taught to every child. And depending on whatever their learning preference is, these are different aspects that can be adopted to help them in their instruction. So these sessions will be broadcast live right from either one of our regional PTIs and also the Uplifting Black Families at FND Facebook page. And you can attend from anywhere. If you aren't able to watch us live, you can watch on the replay. We'll make sure that that opportunity is available for you. So we would like for you to RSVP for the webinar. That just gives us a brief synopsis of those people who join us. Should you have any questions, we can reach out to you at a later time, or you can also reach out to us with added questions or any other type of information that you may need to see in the future. So this is what we will talk about today. We'll talk about content in a diverse classroom where teachers respond to students who may have different needs. Also, the fact that one size does not necessarily fit all. Teaching varies, and as students' needs vary, those teaching methods and learning disciplines wouldn't have to be incorporated into the curriculum to best fit the needs of the students that are absorbing that information. And we'll also round out the webinar by giving you some resources and a few practical strategies to learn how to differentiate that content, make it different, make those processes work, and find out which different products would be available for you as well. So if you have not, take a minute, RSVP, let us know that you are here for the webinar, and that gives us a chance to communicate with you on a more personal level. And as always, if you do not feel comfortable sharing your information on an open forum, please utilize our inbox. It takes you straight to us personally, and you'll be able to put your questions in, have them answered in a more intimate form if you do not feel comfortable adding information or asking a question on an open forum. One of our mottos is that we are here to help. It's exactly how we plan to meet our families where they are and assist them in any way that they might need. So with all due respect, let's go ahead and get into the body of the webinar today. You're here for differentiated instruction, where in differentiated classrooms, teachers begin where the students are, not in front of a curriculum guide. And that's a quote from Carol Tomlinson. You'll see those quotes sprinkled throughout today's webinar as we further progress. And we talk about how different methods of instruction, as well as looking at different strategies, can help your son or daughter, and how they may actually be added into their IEP and implemented that way as well. So again, we want to say thank you and welcome. We are so glad that you joined us here today. Let's give you a little bit of background about FND. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We help families here in the state of Florida. We are what is called a PTI. I know you've heard me say it a little bit in the past. PTI stands for Parent Training and Information. We are here to provide that information, to provide those resources, to provide the support that families need, and educators and other professionals as well, to help understanding what the special needs process looks like for education here in the state of Florida. Now, if you're watching us from a different state, please take the information that we have today and apply it to your state Department of Education and their laws and regulations concerning special education. This webinar is geared specifically for families in Florida, but we'd like for you to take the information and adapt and apply to those practices that are available for your state. One of the things that is great about FND, Family Network on Disabilities, is that we are family-driven and family-centered. And one of the great things is that the majority of the board of directors, the program staff, myself included, we're all family members, persons with disabilities. Some of us have disabilities ourselves, and we all just strive for that community, that grassroots community sense of an organization where we understand the practices, we understand the scope, we understand what it means to care for a loved one with disabilities. So this is one of the ways we're able to meet our families exactly where they are. Now, a little bit of housekeeping rules before we get started into the body of today's webinar. We want you to understand that we do not act as formal attorneys or advocates or either medical professionals. However, as I did state before, we do provide support and information and help identify those options which may be best for your loved ones with disabilities as you are traversing this journey in special needs education and special education as a whole. So with that being said, we'd like for you to engage in the conversation. Should you have questions or any other comments that you would like to either place in the comment box or send to us directly, we invite you to do so during the body of this webinar. We'll talk today about learning objectives. Become familiar with different types of vocabulary that may be related to differentiating instruction. Also, basic principles and understanding what differentiating content looks like, what the processes will entail, and what those products may be in an academically diverse classroom. And we also want you to be able to implement one or more of these strategies that we'll give you today that support differentiation. So teachers didn't have any other choice but to differentiate back in the day. If you see this classroom, it might look like just an old building to you, but it actually was an older classroom. You say, back in the day, this is a throwback where students varied in age, motivation, and even the proficiency of the skills that would be taught to them. When there was the time of the one-room schoolhouse, teachers didn't have any other choice but to teach every student that was there. And even though that term differentiation, it might be a new term, but the philosophy itself is not. We want to talk about what exactly is differentiated instruction, or later on we'll say DI. So that's a mouthful. So we will say DI, how we will refer to it, excuse me, on the future slides. So what does that look like? It's not new. And it was something that teachers just had that innate ability to do, to teach all children, to teach all ages, and change where there may need some change. We are beyond what's called the one size fits all. If you look at this graphic here, differentiated instruction is the same thing. It means changing the pace, changing the level, changing what kind of instruction that you provide in response to those individual learners' needs, their styles, their interests. How would you think that a snake, a turtle, a bird, and an elephant can come in a store and have a sale and be able to purchase something for one size fits all? So the snake and the elephant, what would their sizes look like if they fit both of them? We want to move beyond that one size fits all. It can be defined as a way in which instructors proactively modify the curriculum that they have, proactively modifying those teaching methods, the resources, even the activities that they provide for learners, and those student products which are used to address the needs of individual students, or either small groups of students as well. And we want to be able to maximize the learning potential of each student in the classroom by doing so. So we want to think about what the diversity of these learners look like. What type of interests do they have? Do they have different learning styles? What backgrounds do they have? Personal life experiences are also taken into account. Even prior educational experiences are taken into account, as well as language. And what are their major motivators? Differentiating instruction means that you think proactively from the beginning. And what is deemed as a quote unquote normal lesson includes more than one avenue for success. In that, it makes you think about the diversity of all the learners that you have when you are planning, and that's proactive. So from the beginning stages, from the planning stages, you want to include all of those thought processes, all of those people who are in the classroom, and don't ever fall into the trap of thinking that one size fits all, as we saw on the previous slide. So students, even though they have different learning styles, different backgrounds, different experiences, like you see these bullet points here on this slide, there are ways that students are very, very much alike. They are differentiated as well in those different bullet points you see here. But just like on the previous slide, what could be some of the causes that would make them different in learning or different in that size? And we'll expand on each one of these different bullet points a little later on in the webinar. But I want you to think about how some classrooms structures don't allow for any diversity. They don't address those differences. And in fact, one of the biggest mistakes that we can ever come across in our special education journeys are the fact that at some points, some places try to teach all the children as if they were the same. So now we want to take into account, but remember from the beginning, what the diversity of each one of those learners look like. It's not a one size fits all. So think about the beginning. We talked about being proactive. Where do you start? You want to start with a unique set of decisions that an educator makes to bring learning within the grasp of all of the students. Doesn't mean that teachers individually tailor instruction, but rather they differentiate that instruction for groups of students. What makes this challenging for teachers is that the students' needs may vary. You see this line, the quickest way to get from A to B is a straight line, but maybe that line may have a few curves in it. Let's think about how you may start being proactive across content areas, across different types of times of the year. Some students may struggle a little bit in the beginning, but once they get into their groove, they have a better chance of catching up and learning and grasping those new skills. Sometimes it might be within the content area. They may understand math very, very well, but have problems with fractions. So these are different ways that you want to understand being proactive from the beginning. Let's talk about where you are starting. So remember, we'll use DI for differentiating instruction from now on. So these are some of the guided general principles of DI. This is going to be the teacher's response to what those learners' needs are. So number one, you'll see ongoing assessments and adjustments, where students are assessed in a variety of ways. Also, number two, flexible and varied grouping. So when it's appropriate, that students are going to make choices about how they'll learn and how they show what they've learned. And also number three, respectful tasks. So challenging the instruction to be able to motivate the students to push themselves and go past what the status quo is in that same differentiated in classroom. So because those students' needs change frequently, teachers should be familiar with these general principles or strategies of DI. And it's called ongoing assessment and flexible grouping. So those are the two things that we want you to keep in mind: ongoing assessment and flexible grouping. We'll add some of these to the chat box so that you can understand and have those for a later reference. Ongoing assessment and flexible grouping. So with ongoing assessments, we want to think of, rather than assessing students only at the end of a unit, that teachers can use assessments before and during and also after that teaching unit to be able to gather information that's critical to providing what effective instruction looks like for those students. So it's ongoing rather than at one specific time. So by frequently assessing what the students' knowledge and their skills are, teachers can use that information that they've gathered to be able to develop that instruction and refine the instruction as needed, just to meet what the students' needs are, should there be a shift. So additionally, in assessing students' interests and what their different specific learning profiles look like, teachers can design tasks that are engaging, tasks that are motivating, and also accessible for that learner. So let's talk about the second point, flexible and varied grouping. So being able to best address those learning needs of all of the students, teachers can use a variety of grouping methods. Now, these are some things that you probably have seen before: whole group instruction, small group instruction with no more than maybe 6 kids, and also peer pairs. So in addition to having students to have these groups, we can also have them to work independently. So these are great ways to have, remember, flexible and varied grouping. And also the third part you see here, respectful tasks, it's often used in traditional classrooms. And this is one way that students should be engaged in tasks that are interesting, things that are challenging, things that engage them, and are focused on what those key concepts and skills are that have been introduced by the lesson or whatever unit that they are working on. So these are 3 ways, are 3 guided principles of DI that you could keep in mind to help make sure that regardless of skill set, regardless of skill level. They should work on differentiating the ways that the classroom is set up, the structure of the way that the content is provided, and how students are able to access that same content. So we want to be able to know your student. You see readiness here, interest, and their learning profile. Readiness refers to what the student's knowledge is and skill level regarding what the given content is going to be. So the student's readiness is going to vary across certain subjects or content areas. Let's give you an example. So a student may have a great knowledge about let's say ancient Egypt. So a student may know a whole lot about the pyramids and a whole lot about King Tut, or a whole lot about all of those things that makes ancient Egypt the vast civilization that it was. But they might not have known a lot about the Incans and the Mayans. So you're thinking along the lines of history. They may have had skills and learning all of those things that may have been of great interest to them, and learn a lot of content and concept surrounding ancient Egypt. But when it came to the Incan and Mayan civilizations, they may not have learned as much, or may not have been able to retain as much. So that's one way that you can determine readiness. Even within the same content area, teachers can determine what level a student is working on and any given subject by examining what those results are with either formal or informal tests. You can also view the student's academic record. Also examine what those work samples look like. So if they have work that they have been using and things that they have been adding even to a portfolio, this is one great way to find out what that readiness looks like. And also you can do student self-report measurements and ask students to complete charts for you, something called a KWL. We'll expand on that a little bit later as well. And additionally, students' readiness may be influenced by what background knowledge he has, life experience, or even previous learning. We talked about that. That was one of the bullet points in the previous slides. So these are great ways to assess readiness. And then once you have assessed what that readiness looks like, leads to interest. So interest is going to refer to those topics, those skills, those activities that all pique a student's curiosity and inspire them to learn more about those subjects. Teachers can discover what their students' interests are by determining what topics they enjoy, what activities they engage in, especially those extracurriculars and things that are done outside of the classroom. They can also ask the students to discuss what those interests are, just by simply ask them, finding surveys, completing interest inventories, using journals to write down those things, and participate in icebreaker sessions in the classroom. So you see here, there's interest surveys, centers in different classrooms, and also self-selection. Noticing what the children gravitate toward, what objects, if you're in a pre-K classroom, what different things do they like to go to specifically when they go to their centers? So these are also great ways to understand what those interests are in a classroom that has varied learners. And once they get a little bit older, you can start with the other types, the surveys and self-selection as well, and the journaling. So that leads also to the learning profiles. So we want to refer in this instance as what the student's preferred method of learning and information and skills looks like. Are they visual? Are they hands-on? Do they use deductive reasoning? What are their areas of strength and weaknesses? Also, their work preferences and how self-aware are they? Now, my daughter is a kinesthetic learner. She's hands-on. She needs that extra tactile type of information to help with her processing. So if she has something in her hands, or she has some type of manipulative, that helps her to learn. So that is great to understand, especially when you're writing in an IEP, what the learning profile looks like, so that you're best able to tailor those modifications in a way that makes it interesting for a learner, ways that make a learner more captive to the information and helps them to understand in that specific way that they learn. So teachers can assess students' preferred methods all across these same 3 bullet points you see here. Know your student. So we want to talk about how they can differentiate through content, how they can differentiate through processes, products, and also that learning environment. Sometimes one of the classroom elements associated with DI, and it refers to what the organization and atmosphere of what the classroom actually looks like. That's your learning environment. So let's talk about each one of these. So differentiating content leads to the same concept or skills taught to each student, but the curriculum used to teach the concept or the skill or what that new unit will entail is going to be different for different students. So readiness may look a little different. You have something for interest that might look a little bit different. The learning profile may look a little bit different as well. So let's think of examples of differentiating content at an elementary level. So that can include the following. So using different reading materials that vary on those different readability levels. Also putting text materials on tape. How many times have we gone into a classroom, especially a pre-K classroom or an elementary school classroom, and have different things on the wall that are labeled, or have the chair labeled, different objects that are labeled, or even different centers that are labeled with content that would need to be absorbed and learned by different students. So that's one great way, using those content and text materials on tape to label the different activities and centers and learning objects. So also, let's say using spelling and vocabulary lists as readiness levels for students throughout the classroom, presenting ideas both through different ways, auditory by telling them, and visual methods by showing them. Also, using a reading buddy, which is a great opportunity for that peer group. Remember when we were talking about differentiating and understanding what readiness looked like by having a whole group and small group and even peer-to-peer groups? Well, this is one way to add in that different type of learning atmosphere. And also meeting with those small groups to reteach an area or reteach an idea or skill that it may be a little bit more difficult for certain learners, or extend those thinking skills of those who are grasping and advancing in that learning atmosphere. So with differentiating the process, this is going to be how the information is learned. So they teach the same concept, they teach the same skill to each of the students, but the manner in which the student makes sense of the topic or the skill can vary. So in this manner, we want to think how teachers can vary the activities that the students use to master those concepts or skills. And they can decide how to best doing this by taking account of what their students' readiness levels or their interests are, learning profiles. We talked about that a little bit before. Here are a couple of ways that you can do the same thing, differentiating the process. You'll see here, learning logs, journals, graphic organizers. These are great ways to differentiate what that process of learning looks like. There's interest centers, literature circles, and choice boards here as well. And then also, we would use tiered assignments and cubing. So you see right here, tier 1 instruction, tier 2, and also tier 3. If you have a child with that has participated with MTSS and RTI, that's the multi-tiered system of supports, and also response to intervention, which are very, very, very complex, if you would, acronyms and processes that determine how struggling students or students who may not be struggling, but just need an extra added layer of instruction to be able to grasp those concepts. These are ways that we use those concepts to figure out which students are in certain tiers so that they can get the instruction and the modifications and all of those accommodations that help them within that process and their responses to certain types of intervention. So that's what those are. If you need any more information on MTSS and RTI, we can send that information to you as well to understand how those learning tiers help your student with the accommodations that they would need. Please let us know. We have one-pagers that are able to give you a quick snapshot of how to differentiate those processes and help your learners, even in the home classroom as well. So the next portion talks about differentiating the product, what the product looked like, how these assignments can be differentiated according to the product. So teachers can use what is called the Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences to form groups that will hone particular skills. For example, one group could be working on bodily processes and kinesthetic learning, just like my daughter needs to, and then take that approach to finding different tasks to create and act out as a skit, a little play within the learning environment. And another group could be using visual or spatial to use those things, those site plans to see what their tasks, to use those concepts to be able to illustrate. So using using differentiated aspects in the classroom, be it hearing or visual or spatial or hands-on kinesthetic, to be able to change up the way that the skills are presented, but to find the same result as in the child understanding how those concepts are adapted and learning in the way that they also learn. So here you'll see 3 bullet points that show how differentiating the product will help those learners as well. You see, the first one was writing puppet shows or other creative ways that helps those creative juices to flow, being that your child is kinesthetic learners, such as my daughter is, by being able to use your hands to have that skill reinforced. The next portion shows assessment based on rubrics and learning profiles. So this is one way also that you're able to differentiate what the product looks like to be able to assess those skill levels and grasp those new skills and new concepts in the classroom. And also by hearing action verbs, creative ways to self-assess how a student is able to understand what those skills are, having extensive understanding, extensive applications, causing students to actually think about the things and apply those skills that they are learning, even expand on key understandings and skills. So remember, you want to differentiate the product, how the students demonstrate the knowledge that are being taught to them. And then the last portion, we talk about differentiating the learning environment, facilitating what a supportive classroom looks like. So without that effective learning environment that has rules, that has procedures, having codes of conduct and differentiating content processes and all those other bullet points that we talked about a little bit earlier, that might be more difficult to accomplish. It may not result in always positive outcomes if they are not first put in place. Differentiating instruction involves making changes to either one or all of those elements. So classroom setup is one of those physical ways that you can manipulate that physical space and contribute to what the quality of that overall learning environment looks like. So what you want to do is to plan flexible room arrangements to support what an effective learning environment looks like. What does actually an effective differentiated classroom look like? And what does it sound like? Well, today, those classrooms might take that step even a little bit further. If there are safety protocols that are in place, how would you use those same safety protocols to create a safe space, a space that is engaging and also supportive in that classroom, even with the new added safety protocols added into that learning environment. What does it look like to become an engaging classroom, even if you have places where students can't be closer together? Well, think about it this way. Use these 3 bullet points. You'll see how to build a classroom community within that learning environment. Remember, we are talking about facilitating a supportive classroom. Figure out the way that it is going to be set up. What those physical spaces would look like, whether you would have individual desks, the desks are spread farther apart, or what does it look like? Are they spread around the perimeter? Do you have classrooms that have desks that are set in the middle? Just making sure that all of this fosters a supportive classroom, an effective learning environment, and that there's a space for positive communication, even cultural diversity and routines. You want to be able to make sure that you help other students learn, as well as have that need to move around. Even when other students may learn best quietly. So have all of those different aspects added into that learning environment, that supportive classroom, as well as providing a safe space, adhering to protocols, is all one extra step within facilitating what a supportive classroom looks like. So you want to think about getting in the zone. Some things may be too easy. They get it right away. Some things might be just right. You know, some things that, or you may have to think a little bit and work a little bit about it and, you know, accept that challenge. But then some things that may just be a little bit too difficult and they don't know where to begin. They start to get frustrated. So we want to have them in that just right zone. That's the place to be. This is where we all strive to be. That's the achievement into the just right zone. So if you think about Bloom's taxonomy with lots and going to HOTS. So lots coming with remembering, highlighting, identifying, listing, matching, all of these different aspects that are things that you have with lots. Those are low order thinking skills, lots, LOTS. We'll add that into the comment section so that you can have that for later reference. So lots. So from one side of the slide, you'll see low order thinking skills. And then at the other side of the slide, you'll see HOTS, that's high order thinking skills. You may also see it as a tiered triangle in some references, but for this slide, you'll see a linear representation from yellow moving over to blue with those higher order thinking skills. So if you're having an organized sets of objectives, teachers can learn how to plan. They can learn how to deliver that appropriate instruction. They can also use this to understand how to design valid assessment tasks and plan those strategies around what those thinking skills are going to look like. And that is going to help ensure that the instruction and the assessment are all aligned with what the objectives are for that classroom. Remember, each one of those bullet points that we talked about a little bit before are ways that you can assess, the ways that you can differentiate, the ways that you can figure what the order of the classroom would look like, how to best create that environment for those students, even if you have a classroom that is full of students who have varying needs, who have varying learning skills, who have varying exceptionalities even within the same classroom. So we want to think of in terms of Bloom's taxonomy and how these assessments will be aligned for the objectives that students are going to need in that same classroom. So here's the tiered process that we talked about a little bit before. Multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, that Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is one of those other acronyms that we will expand on a little bit more. If you need information on either one of these, MTSS, Response to Interventions, RTI, please let us know. We have one-pagers that we can send to you that will give you a quick synopsis of all of this information in a quick and concise level of information that's not overwhelming. You can understand what the process looks like in a digital form that you can keep on your digital device either digital device that you use. So it's one way to understand how these processes work and be able to have it at your ready. So let's talk about MTSS. UDL at the bottom is a universal design for learning. That gives all the students an equal opportunity to learn. And as you go up, you see differentiated instruction, which is what we're talking about today, how teachers adapt that instruction to what those students' differences are looking like. Remember all of the bullet points that we talked about a little bit before. That's how all of the differences will adapt right in that same classroom. And then once we get to the top tier, that's where you adapt to the needs of, as they are appropriate to the needs of each eligible student. So these are the ways that we use MTSS to define those students who may need more work, more access to the content, to be able to understand what those skills are and to understand the ways that they learn and adapt to their needs as appropriate. So the next portion we'll talk about are assistive technologies and services. What alternate formats looks like, what alternate materials that are available. So once you get to the top tier, the target tier, that helps students who have the most complex needs. So these students may now require what a specialized evaluation will look like to determine what their individual needs are. And they also require an additional follow-up and technical interventions to support recommended technology that may be able to help them access that classroom curriculum. Also at tier 3, the very, very top tier, teachers and other specialists can work together, work collaboratively with an assistive technology or AT specialist, and that can complete an evaluation of the needs and identify what those appropriate technology interventions and support interventions would look like to support the students' needs, what services they might need, what devices they may need. They may also develop what's called an implementation plan to support that recommended technology over time. So using the roles and responsibilities guidelines that we'll give you a little bit later on, this evaluation is going to be conducted. An IEP team decides what technology can be provided and how the technology will be implemented. So in some cases, long-term trials may be required along with those ongoing assessments. So you see here, you'll see digital stories, Pictello, and this is talking visual story creator. So this helps a student to be able to make a story. You might be able to make their own PowerPoint, to do their own presentations, all by using a device that is implemented and used along with that guided curriculum in a differentiated classroom. So we understand, assistive technology or AT and services are all there to help those students, especially the students who have been identified at that top tier, to need a little bit more added support, added services to help them to grasp those skills and knowledge sets that are going to be able to help them be independent, be creative learners, be the best learners that they can be in that classroom. But it all starts with defining those roles that wouldn't be needed, defining those items that would need to be modified, defining what their learning styles look like so that they are able to receive the services and technology and differentiated instruction that will help them just be great. So you want to think about all of the different ways that we found information and all of those vetted guides that have been used to make this workshop and a possibility. You want to bring these to you and put them in the forefront if you want to have any more information about those differentiated instructions specifically. This is a great time to take a snapshot of the slide that we have here. So we gathered information about inclusion, about differentiating, a universal design for learning, how differentiating instruction strategies can be put into practice, all of those different ways to be implemented and finding the way that works best for your learner who has a disability. Take a snapshot of this slide so that you may be able to find out more information from all of the places where we gather for this specific workshop. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And should you have any questions about the content that we've had on today's webinar, please reach out to us. We will make sure that you understand how to do that by sharing our contact information at a time a little later on. So this is our family, our regional family of PTIs that's popping in the Panhandle, PSN for Central Florida, and Penn South Florida project. We also have Family STAR, which stands for Support, Training, Assistance, and Resources, which is our medical component, and also F&D Trust Services. These are our regional PTIs for the family of services we provide here with Family Network on Disabilities. Depending on where your location is in the state of Florida, either one of these regional PTIs can assist you. So either one of the regional projects would be able to understand those things that are reticent to you, especially because of where you live. We can pair you with a parent trainer that can help give you guided resources and specialized instruction according to your region. Please reach out to Family Network on Disabilities with any questions that you may have. If you take a minute and go over to our websites, www.fndusa.org, and click on the resources tab. There's one resource that we would like to invite you to find out more information about. It's FND University. It is not accredited, but it's made especially to understand those practices and all of the different aspects of special education and what it looks like, especially here in the state of Florida. It's self-guided, and you can take different courses on topics, especially like the ones that we had today: differentiated instruction, learning styles, even MTSS and RTI, as we talked about before. Those systems of support and response to intervention. Those are different things that you could take more information, take more time to learn about at FND University. You'll get a certificate at the very end and a transcript of all of the courses that you take with that. That's one great way to learn a little bit more in depth about the aspects of special education that we give you the basic here with on, all of the webinars that we have. So FND University right there at your disposal on the www.fndusa.org website. Now, at a later time, we will add in an evaluation. Please let us know how we may be able to better assist you with our the information that we have added into our webinars. Help us to help you. If you'd like to see more content and give us those topics that you'd like to see more information on, this is one great way to make your interests known with an evaluation link that we will add into the comments after the conclusion of the webinar. And with that, we want to say thank you. For more information, please join us at our website for Family Network on Disabilities at www.fndusa.org. We also have under the resources tab, ESE downloads. Now, this is a great way to be able to have bite-sized chunks and one-pagers that we talked about, all of that information condensed into a one-page format that is digital ready and mobile ready, so that you may be able to keep those in a personal library and have that information at your disposal, especially on the go. If you'd like to join us here or have any content that you would like to ask questions about, or even personal questions, we are here to help. You can contact Family Network on Disabilities at 1-800-825-5736. Again, that number is 1-800-825-5736. And again, we invite you to take the information we learned here with differentiated instruction and apply it to your child's school year. content in the diverse classroom. What does that look like? One size does not necessarily fit all. And take the resources and practical strategies that we spoke on today to learn how to differentiate that content, differentiate the processes, and also the products. We want to thank you for joining us here today. My name is LaTosha Bird. I'm the multicultural outreach coordinator for Family Network on Disabilities right here in the state of Florida, where we are striving for complete integration and equality of people with disabilities in a society without barriers. Now, should you want to schedule a live workshop for your organization, you can use this flyer and send your request right there. Tap on this link, it takes you directly to our inbox. Put in the information that you would have us to know, and we can contact you to facilitate that need. Should you need to get in contact with me directly, I can be reached at lbird@fndfl.org, and also by phone, 407-906-5366. We invite you to visit our website at www.fndusa.org. Schedule a workshop for yourself or your organization, and also join Uplifting Black Families at FND and share in the conversation. So we want to thank you for joining us today. Take the information that you've learned here and apply to your current situation. And should you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to Family Network on Disability on either one of our social media platforms, or even through a basic phone call. We are so glad that you joined us today. And on behalf of our full FND Family Network on Disabilities family, we want to say thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great school year.